Okay, we're going to go with round two of correcting Rolling Stone's top 100 album covers of all time. I think we did a fair and honest job last time, and uh, this time will be unfair and dishonest, but we're still going to go through 33 more tonight.
As we are
And
one to do.
number 67, Lord Melodrama. A I'm not super strong on my artists, but I'd say this is maybe a little Van Gogh-ish. Maybe slightly, a little appeal to that. Also, a little bit of uh, software driven. Make this an animated or make it look like a painting. So, combination between Van Gogh and weak AI for this cover. I think a kind of a cool cover. Um, my bar remains high for the top 100 album covers, so I don't think this goes anywhere near a worst list, but I think this is a perfectly serviceable album cover, but not one of the 100 greatest. Your thoughts?
So I do like it. Um, Again, it's an image of the artist, although I don't think it really captures her likeness. That doesn't look like Randy Marsh at all. Real
No.
ones know what I'm talking about. Um, but yeah, I mean, I like the color palette. It's fine. Is this top 100? Absolutely not.
Hey, Marvin Gaye, here, my dear. I'll let you start us off on this one.
No. So this is the Ted Nugent of this list for me. So first off, I like Marvin Gaye. Um, I think What's Going On is a great album. And if you're going to do like just the artist on the album cover thing, I think that's a really good example of it being done right. This, first off, I actually don't like this aesthetically, but my bigger problem with it is just like the Ted Nugent thing, it shouldn't have been on there because it's not their own criteria. This isn't either. If you read their little blurb, the reason they chose this is because of the packaging for the album. So this is the front cover representing marriage. The back cover is everything crumbling and on fire representing divorce or the disillusion of the marriage. And on the inside, there's images of them playing Monopoly to represent the divorce proceedings. This isn't the best concept packaging for albums list. It's the best album covers list.
That's
So just
fair.
like that Ted Nugent cover, that wasn't the actual album cover. It wasn't bad album cover ideas that you didn't use. So this should not be on there.
This is why you watch us, folks. It's Dr. Mike's a stickler for details, and
I am. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, uh, so I'm not even going to comment on it because it broke the rules. So we're going to move on. I don't
It's
like it that much.
disqualified.
Disqualified. So we're going back. This is DJ Shadow introducing. Um, this is the Tom Petty cover that we looked at on the worst album covers of all time. This is flipping through your home photos and going, oh, looky there. I need a photo of a record store. Here's a good one. Definitely not top 100 material. Uh, Approaches being on the worst one. I don't see it really any different than the Petty cover that we talked about when we talked about worst album covers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is ironic that this is a Rolling Stone list of the best when they put Tom Petty doing the exact same thing on the worst. I get it. Like it's this is an album that was made up entirely of samples. So it's him flipping through records looking for samples. Like I get how it ties into it. And I'll admit it makes me nostalgic for record stores. Record store kids or when parts of Spotify was printed out in hard copy and you could go to a place and physically touch all of the albums. It was weird when you say it out loud like that. But so it makes me nostalgic for that. But no, this is exactly the same thing as the Tom Petty album cover that they put on their own worst list. Get it together, Rolling Stone.
Yeah. Yeah. The other element of record stores is you were Google. If you wanted to go search for an album, you went and searched for the album. Google does all that work for you now. All right, Sonny Rollins, Way Out West. Your thoughts, sir?
So I don't necessarily have a problem with this, and I actually like the really washed out look of the guy and the scenery, and then the bright blue sky behind him. I actually think that looks pretty cool. But I assume this is Sonny Rollins, who I'm not familiar with. So this is just another picture of the artist on the album cover. I'm sure with the Out West title, this obviously fits into whatever the theme or concept of the record was. But 100 best.
I will put a second question mark behind that sentence and agree. Uh, nice typography. I think for the
Yeah,
photo,
you
the way
can
they
read
were,
that.
so they did a nice job there. Super, super glad he's holding the saxophone at the levels he's holding it versus down a little bit. That would have just been even a less enjoyable album cover. Um, but yeah, I don't really have much to add beyond. I mean, it's kind of. I mean, the washed out aged looks kind of cool for the photo, but not going to stop me in my tracks at the time traveling record store that we're walking through for this discussion. Uh, Janet Jackson, the Velvet. I wanted to say Velvet Pope for some reason, but it's not. It's the Velvet Rope. Um, hate to sound like a broken record, no pun intended, but not seeing this on not seeing this on the top 100 list either. Photo of the artist will let you kind of dig into that a little bit more. Um, looks like they just said, let's play with saturation a little bit and kind of do some things to make it look a little bit different. But I don't think the end product's that appealing in terms of the palette it ends up with. So I don't like it on multiple levels. Again, not one I'd move to the worst list, but a head scratcher for me why it's on the best.
Yeah, I think it's a really good photo of her. But I mean, I feel like she has other album covers that also have great photos of her, and you could say are all iconic in that sense because there was a period of time in the 90s there where I'm not going to say she was as big as her brother, but I mean, she was a huge R&B singer. So like these albums were everywhere. Everybody saw these album covers. She was instantly recognizable. So it's iconic in the sense of like her fame, and this is a really good picture of her. It's a cool picture, but it's just a picture of Janet Jackson.
Yeah,
Like there's nothing that makes the I mean, it's got a red background, so I guess velvet rope in there, but there's nothing. If I didn't know who Janet Jackson was, if I wasn't around in the 90s for her reign as the Beyonce of that time, I wouldn't know what this was.
yeah, I'd agree. Props on a fully functioning turtleneck though. No malfunction there. So good for her on that. Hmm. My Bloody Valentine by Loveless. I know we just talked about it, but I can't remember whose turn it is to start off. Is
I mean,
that
I can go.
okay? There you go. Let's do that.
I totally agree with this beat on the list. This is one of my favorite album covers, and this is an example of an album cover that perfectly summarizes what you're about to listen to. It is a blurry, uh, double exposed, washed out image of the guitar player, close up of the guitar. That's exactly what this is. This is a important album in shoegaze music, which is very distorted, oversaturated, echoey guitars and things like that. This looks like what it sounds like.
Yeah,
Also,
and
My Bloody Valentine, where they took their name from, is an underrated movie, in my opinion.
I so it's odd. The palette here is not highly dissimilar than the Janet Jackson cover. If you think at least the lot of the range and stuff there. Obviously, a much different treatment, versus an in focus photo versus single exposed and all that, and what well focused. um, but I would have to agree with you that this uh, belongs on the list. Creative, eye catching, uh, pleasure to look at. I'd put it up on the wall. So I think that's a cool cover. So we'll go with that.
It's a good album too.
All right. Beastie Boys License to Ill. So, I'm waiting for the Rolling Stone top 100 albums featuring aircraft. This will clearly be on that list by perhaps his number, in the high top five for sure. But behind Blue Oyster Cult's Secret Treaties and not present on this list, I'd like to point out, unfortunately. I think Secret Trees is actually a better cover than this. But this is a pretty cool cover. I like it. It's got I mean good branding from there, so it's a good way to get that across. I can't exactly put my finger on why I'm such a big fan of this cover, but and I enjoy the Beastie Boys. I'm not a rabid fan, but I enjoy the Beastie Boys. But this cover in particular, I've always just thought was pretty great. So very comfortable with it being on the list, and I like it.
I totally agree. So I have a prop. So they mentioned this, and this is going to sound like I'm contradicting what I said about Marvin Gaye, but I'm not. So this cover folds out. This is not a best packaging thing. This cover folds out. So this is a part of the cover. So if you had the original gatefold vinyl, and they mention it here, but they don't show it, which seems stupid. So this is the full image. It's the plane crashing into a wall, and it's crumpled up and burning like a cigarette. So I'm a big fan of it. I think it's really cool. Also, if you look at it, the call sign on the plane says "Eat Me"
Yep, in a mirror.
backwards.
Yeah.
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 So I do think, just like My Bloody Valentine, this sums up what you're about to listen to when you get it. I do think this is a great album. I'm a big Beastie Boys fan. Kerry King from Slayer plays guitar on one of the songs on here. There's not a lot to not like about this, as far as I'm concerned. But I loved this album cover as a kid, especially opening up the vinyl and seeing the full image. I thought it was great. I immediately understood that's meant to be a cigarette. And yeah,
Yeah, I don't
I
know if 5 minutes ago Mike would agree with you to factor all that information into there, but current Mike apparently does. So it, yeah, and that's where I struggled a little bit because, and it's only like a tiny little part of the packaging, but uh, Tony O'Kay's Life in the Food Chain, one of the greatest albums of all time. There's themes to the side. There's Love in the Ruins and Life in the Food Chain. And so that's how that came out. And then America, his second album, also one of the greatest albums of all time, was subtitled Cars, Guitars, and Teenage Violence. And so he did a great job with, so all of that stuff was pretty cool. But on the first album, as you pulled out the inner sleeve, which had the lyrics on it, there's a picture of a guy pointing like a 38 snub down in a toilet, black and white photo, like he's doing that. It's a great shot. But I can't factor any of that into this discussion because I'm going to stay true to my principles. That it's not about packaging. And
I'm making the caveat that that's part of the cover for this, as opposed to Marvin Gaye. You have to open the album and you're going into inner packaging and things like that. And the front and back are separate images on the Marvin Gaye album. This folds open. So that's where I'm
okay,
making the distinction.
okay. Uh, Ricky Lee Jones, not Ricky Lee Jones. I just looked at her, had her in a break. I said Ricky Lee Jones. Sorry, Joni Mitchell, uh, and the album name. I don't know. Hedgera? I don't know. Joni Mitchell who looks like Ricky Lee Jones. What do you think, Mike?
I so I like black and white album covers. I like double exposures like this. I always thought that was cool. I don't think this is the best example of it though. because there's already another background behind her, and then the road is double exposed inside of her, but they kept her hand like going into the pocket there, which I think is distracting from the image. The hand near her face is fine, but the one going into her pocket looks weird to me. So just from a design perspective, while there's elements I like in here, I just for me it doesn't really come together. And I can be a little bit objective because I'm not a Joni Mitchell fan.
Yep. Nor am I. Uh, and I'm just kind of, I mean, yes, there's some creativity with the double exposures or overlays, the types of things that they've done here. Um, but I'm just not sold on it. I don't think it's a bad album cover. I do think it's not executed flawlessly for a lot of the reasons you pointed out. And so while pocket hand bothers you, cigarette hand bothers me because just the way it comes out of the cloud there is takes me out of my suspension of disbelief that Joni Mitchell actually does have a road running up through her waist. And so that's it for me.
That's
So
fair.
so I'd say bounce this one stone. Sonic Youth. Goo. I can live with this being on the top 100. Um, Not this high. Uh, kind of a cool concept to have basically kind of your underground newspaper cartoon look going to it. Um, so there you go. So I'm okay with that. Uh, your thoughts, art major
I get
Mike.
it. I get it, like the indie zine look and stuff to it. And it's a famous album cover. I remember seeing this everywhere. So I mean it's definitely famous. It's you could even say iconic in its own right. I personally don't love it, but I'm not mad that it's on the list, but I agree with Kelly. It shouldn't be this high on the list.
Um, Rosalia Elbar de Choir. I don't know. So to me, an album I can't pronounce can't be on this list. And so, um, what are your thoughts?
My thought is that I'm glad you read the album titles.
Poorly, but yeah, thank you.
I mean I'm not a fan of this. I don't know who this artist is, to be fair. So, maybe this makes perfect sense in context. But I've seen, and maybe this is an homage to something, but I've seen very similar images on multiple album covers and things before. And this is newer, so they didn't come up with it first. So, and that is something I'm kind of holding against a lot of albums so far. So I'm going to continue to do that.
Yeah, and before any movie distributed by Columbia. And this is very kind of reminiscent of that as well. So doesn't break a whole lot of new ground. Nice symmetry though. Doesn't belong on this list, especially because I can't say the title. Yeah, so now we get like a slightly different flavor. Lana Del Rey, Norman effing Rockwell. See how I did that to avoid me having to edit the type of thing. That's not gonna
I
stop
was,
you. That's okay. Yeah.
I was wondering. I was wondering.
Um, uh, Top 100 album covers. It's a cheap attempt to get on the list by introducing profanity on your album cover. He didn't work for Van Halen and for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, so they weren't able to kind of sneak onto the list with their process. This is a lot less subtle than that. Um, uh, I'm going to go again that I'm okay with it being on the list, and I guess probably somewhere in the range they have it. I like kind of the combination of styles that they pulled together here. I'm not sold on the Batman styled explosion as the titling. I think that's the miss there for me. It seemed they had to throw in one other style to kind of mix it up, but overall, I'm okay. I'm okay with it being on the list. It's quirky, it's weird, it's artistic. I'm okay with it.
So I like Lana Del Rey. She was on one of our prisoner exchange playlists that we had done. So anybody who didn't see that, go back and watch that. So I'm a fan of Lana Del Rey. Her album covers though do tend to just be photos of her with some sort of a theme, but they're just photos of the artist typically. Um, I don't love this. I get it, and I don't dislike it. Like I'm not, it doesn't hurt my eyes to look at it or anything like that. But I am with Kelly that I don't like the comic book kind of lettering near the top of it. It's distracting from it. So I personally wouldn't put it on the list, but there's worse on here.
Just should have done the Norman Rockwell had a very unique signature approach. Should have just replicated that up in the corner and she'd have been fine. Free input for you there, Alana. Uh, T-Rex Electric Warrior. I like T-Rex because I can say T-Rex. It's a good name. It's a big jump there. I'll let you start off on this one.
So similar to My Bloody Valentine, we have guitar player on the cover of it. And once again, just like My Bloody Valentine, I feel like T-Rex has summed up the album you're about to listen to. You see the guitar player playing, standing in front of a stack amplifier. That's what you're gonna get when you listen to this. I kind of like these simple, this is what it sounds like on the image approaches. I feel like if you've never heard My Bloody Valentine, you never heard T-Rex, I showed you these images, played the album, this would make sense to you.
Yeah, and I think it the the text is simple, clean, reads well. Had this been a photo they had tried to achieve something similar with, I don't think it would have been nearly as striking an album color. So kind of go into the, the two-tone approach was really cool to still maintain. You have no question of what you're seeing there, and so um, good one to have on the list. Good one to have on the list about where it's at. So I'm all right there. All right, Tribe Called Quest, the low end theory. Um, A on creativity, uh, D on appeal to Kelly. And I can't put my finger on it exactly why. Color choice, thumbs up on if you're going to reduce the number of colors. It's kind of a cool combo. Um, I just don't like this one. I do think it's creative and artistic, but it does not speak in our time traveling record store. I'm moving on from this one quick. This is repelling me to another album, possibly to the Leo Sayer Floating in the Air album cover. I don't know, but pushing me away from there. How about you?
So I like this album cover. It's a famous album, so it's become like an iconic image, and this color scheme and the overall look of it is something that Tribe Called Quest carried on throughout the rest of their career. Again, so back when this show started off as a recommendation show back in the day, a Tribe Called Quest album was one of my recommendations, not this one, but it was one of my recommendations. So I do like this. I don't think the design is great, speaking from a design standpoint, but considering how many albums this kind of influenced in this style of more kind of laid back rap music. And again, they continued on with this color palette and theme for multiple albums. For anybody who hasn't seen this, it's a woman with just body paint on, of red and green body paint with a black background, kind of crouched down in the corner. So I don't I wouldn't put it on my top albums list, but I don't dislike it either.
All right. Bjork, homogenic, have at it.
I don't like this album cover, but sticking with the criteria that I've kind of been going off of, this kind of looks like what the album sounds like. I feel like if I showed you this, played the Bjork album, you'd get it. This this would make sense.
Yeah, I don't think consistency with the artist's work is the sole criterion to push it up. If it was, then I could see this one being on the list. I don't think this one belongs on the list. I think it is
Yeah.
Bjork being Bjork, kind of thing ish, or a. So I I'm just not super sold on it. It does. It's another one too that I'd pause momentarily to kind of go what, and but then move on because it doesn't beckon to me any further. Uh, Still pretty cool work here. I think it's pretty clever there, but just not top 100 for me. See, I kind of figured this was going to be on the list somewhere because you just never forget this album cover when you see it. Judas Priest, British Steel. Uh, the fact that, when the words album cover come up, and if I'm just clicking through my memory real quick on album covers I've seen, this one's usually in the top 10. So highly memorable. Uh, I'm scared of the man that needs a razor blade that large. So I'm prepared by that. Um, Kind of sort of on the, I mean, I think clever about British Steel, the kind of making that tie in and all that. Um, so I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it on the list. I could even see this one a little higher. So I'm good with this one.
Yeah, I'm about the same on it. So I don't personally love it necessarily, but I saw this as a kid before I even knew who Judas Priest was or became a fan of their music. And this album image just stuck with me. So, I mean, it more than did its job. I didn't know who they were, but I knew there was a band called Judas Priest. This was their album cover. So, I mean, it worked in that sense. Judas Priest, in my opinion, though, album cover wise, is kind of a mixed bag. They have some really memorable covers like this, and then they also have, in my opinion, and I'm a fan, so this isn't me trashing the band, but they have some of the worst album covers I've ever seen. They have an album called Live Meltdown that it's honestly hard to look at. Another one of their albums, Nostradamus, looks just a hair better than a Creed album cover. So this is, and let me right a wrong of our last Rolling Stone list here too. So Kelly, when we were talking about the Creed album cover, put up a Creed album cover that I was talking about and tried to correct me on the sport that it was. But we didn't realize is that was the fixed album cover. So I did mention there were two different album covers. That was the replacement one after everybody made fun of the first one. So that's when they fixed it. So I was not incorrect, just for the record, because we're infallible, like the Pope.
Okay.
So I was not wrong. That was when they fixed the album cover. There was a worse and incorrect version of it that they released first.
I apologize for the 107 album covers you required me to research and pull up and include that
Okay.
I took
Okay.
a misstep and
I
get
forgive you.
a version. Uh, okay. I don't know whether there's going to be images of both on here or not. We'll see on that. Maybe I'll have Mike send. Mike, you go ahead and send me those images. If Mike sends me those images, they'll have been here. If he doesn't, then he didn't. All right, sir. Sleater Kinney, the Hot Rock. We're in desaturated land again, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, it looks, it does kind of look like what the album sounds like. I mean, it's a picture of the band. It's got that indie, desaturated look to it, which is kind of what they sound like. But no, I this is just a picture of the band trying to hail a cab on the street corner. And I have nothing against this band. It's just that if I saw this, this wouldn't grab my attention in any way.
Yeah, you Photoshop Tom Petty in the background there. It was like, oh, Tom got out of the record store. He's getting ready to leave. He's catching a cab with these young hipsters. So it's the way it went. So yeah, I'm kind of the same thing. It's not entirely different than just a snapshot. Hmm. David Bowie, Diamond Dogs. We're both big David Bowie fans. Um, so I don't love this cover. Uh, I'm kind of thinking through Bowie's album covers has been also kind of a always creative, but kind of a mixed bag to a degree. Um, I think this is looks like it sounds to a large degree, so I'll buy into that. Um, so while I'm not a big fan of it per se, I do think this is pretty iconic, pretty pretty cool. I wonder whether a little bit of the fact that I'm a Bowie fan's um, influenced me. I'm trying to stay objective on that, but I don't know how successful I'm being. But I think it's pretty cool. I think it belongs on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's iconic, it's memorable, it does its job. This is another one I remember seeing as a kid and always kind of stuck with me. I'm a big Bowie fan. I think he has way better album covers than this, though. Especially you have, spoiler alert, there's another Bowie album on here, but even something that they didn't choose, like Outside, which is an album that I defend. I know a lot of people don't like it. That's way better of an album cover than this is. But I mean, it does grab your attention. To me, the artwork's maybe a step above something like Raise Your Fist and Yell. So, like, I don't think it's good, but it is memorable.
Yeah, it's in the raise your fist and yell family tree, but much further up where it's getting sunshine and has flourished versus the grubby roots of it. Pet Shop Boys actually, Mike?
Um, I like Pet Shop Boys. It's just a picture of them. I mean, it's not bad, but is this greatest of all time cover?
Yeah, I'm kind of not allowed to add. I mean, it kind of looks like our show. You know,
Yeah, this is them guessing that podcasts would be a thing, prognosticating.
yeah, this is so I think they're mocking Bog Panda a little bit here, but that's all right. You know, they were visionary in the future to do that. Um, no argument. You know, no nothing against this cover. Not a top 100 for me. Cali 13, Cali 13. I hope I got that pronunciation right. Um, I don't know, and maybe it's because I'm a Midwesterner. I don't know. I'm not as uh, urban advanced as the coastal individuals are. Um, there's just not much for me to like on this cover. So so it's definitely attention getting. Give it that. Um, but this was more maybe a personal taste thing. I'm not a fan of this cover, so I wouldn't have it on the list.
There. So this is another one. This image has been done in different variants numerous times. For a second, when I was first scrolling through this, I actually thought it was the nearly identical looking Poison album cover, but there are a bunch of variants on this of the mouth open with the tongue out kind of thing and different things there. So no, This shouldn't be on there. This isn't particularly done any better than those were, and it's been done before and after. So another one of those. I just don't understand why it's here, and I am going to hold against it that it's not the most creative.
Eric B. Rakim, paid in full. Let you start, sir.
So I'm a huge Rakim fan. I'm a fan of this album as well. I do like the look of the money behind them, how the money is like all washed out looking and stuff like that. I've always liked that. The problem is, and I like the idea of like the gold font on it, but like even looking at it as small, I know what it says and I know where where the lettering is. It's difficult to read it, and I wouldn't even necessarily see that. So, from a design perspective, no, I don't like it. The album, though, I am a big fan of.
Yeah, I think the thing that kind of would keep it off the list for me is the typography and that the uh, the band name almost impossible to read, super easy to miss. Paid in full is not that much better. I mean,
No.
you got to work at it. So, if the purpose of the album cover is to make sure you know who the artist is and the name of the album, in addition to setting a tone with it, I think this is a miss on there. So for lack of use of the bold option in the word processor, yeah, going to bounce that one. Roxy Music cover, but not like we saw before from Roxy Music. They had some presence on the worst album cover. For Your Pleasure. Um, this is tough because in terms of I think there was kind of an angle that Roxy Music was going on with their covers. Uh, and this is, I think, their possibly their best execution. So I want to reward good work, for within their chosen vein. Um, I think it's memorable. I think it's kind of a cool cover from there. I think the Panther could have been handled better, but I think it's a pretty cool cover. I could see why it's on a top 100 list. I wouldn't have it this high. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen this album cover before. It is memorable, so I can see it making a list for that reason. For me personally, though, take Roxy Music off there and put any perfume or any other kind of logo on there, and it just kind of looks like an ad that you would have seen in the 80s or 90s. So I don't know that it sells me on the music in any way, personally.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, get this one right, Mike. Some girls.
No, this
Oh, you
shouldn't
got it
be.
wrong. You got it wrong. Go ahead. Tell
This
me why you're
shouldn't be
wrong.
on the list. How is this on the list? But
This is awesome.
I don't
I
know.
guess
It just
again, you're this when you want to be, you're this anti can't talk about the whole album package kind of guy. And I guess you could
Kelly,
argue.
Kelly, would you would put this above, say, Sticky Fingers?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I think
You
this
could
is
unzip the pants on Sticky Fingers.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I this has always spoke to me. I've always thought this was a great one of I think it's one of the greatest album covers. So I think it's completely belongs on this list. Now you just disagree this is not the Rolling Stones cover that you'd want to have on there, or you just don't think this even belongs on the list?
No, I could see why somebody would choose it for the list. I would put other Rolling Stones album covers higher. So for anybody who doesn't know, and I would never promote myself or anything that I was a part of, but my band Pagan and I recreated a Rolling Stones album cover for a poker set. that was related to D12, who are best known as Eminem's group. They put out a poker set, the Last American Rock Stars poker set, and we recreated the Rolling Stones album cover for them for it. And also a compilation album that I produced. We redid the Sticky Fingers album cover, but it's like a gang member holding a baseball bat on it. So it's I like Rolling Stones. I like I'm not like Vex who venomously hates them. I like the Rolling Stones. I just think they have better album covers, in my opinion. There's album covers that have appealed to me more.
I could see Pagan in this album cover sliding in there. Your faces had been great. I think it's a great cover. I think you're 100% wrong. So, oh boy, the Roots, things fall apart. Um, so I don't know what to say. It uh, so if this was uh, top 100 impactful photos, uh, unquestionably something like this captures uh, stuff we need to not forget. So I think um, finding ways to continue to put some things out in front of people uh, is a good idea. Um, so I gotta go stay on the list and about at the right place because it's definitely I'm just not happy after looking at the album cover, but I guess that's kind of the point. So um, so I think this is a pretty impressive piece of art. So your thoughts, sir?
I think it's definitely a really striking album cover. I'm a big fan of the Roots. They're from Philadelphia, where I'm from, so they're very popular around here. I think it's a really striking album cover. There was, if I remember correctly, and I didn't read the blurb they have on this, so it might mention it. There were actually multiple album covers released for this album, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if they're saying that this particular image was the one, or are they counting all of them towards it? That I'm just not sure, and I should have read the blurb to understand where they fell on that. But I do think it's a striking album cover.
Totally supported being on the list. Okay. Liz Fair, Exile in Guyville. Have at it. Not Liz Fair. Don't have at Liz Fair. Just the album cover.
Just the album cover.
Just the album cover.
Um, so I mean, it's again, this is kind of a famous album cover. If you dated a girl in the '90s at all, she had this album, so you saw it. Whether you're a guy, girl, whatever, if you dated a girl, she had this album in her CD binder that she had. So I've seen this album cover a lot. So I guess it's very effective in that it's a very memorable album cover. So yeah, I do think it's ironic because Liz Fair wasn't she also on the worst album covers list?
I think she was.
Yeah. And I do think
Three.
it's ironic because like this album, she got tons of praise for this album cover and the artwork in the album itself, and then did an album a while later where she looks more conventionally pretty, like made up and things like that on it, and that gets trashed. And they're both photos of her. So I think that's an interesting commentary in and of itself, probably. But people hate that album cover, and I believe it was on the worst album covers list. So I think that's interesting that these are on the opposite ends of the spectrum for Rolling Stone, and they're both just pictures of the artist.
Yeah, the blurb mentions that the this is the alternative photo shoot they took because the original idea was a swimming pool full of a naked Barbie orgy, naked Barbie doll orgy, which I think should belong on the list. And had that been the cover, I would be in full support of it staying on the list. This one I'm a little on the fence on. So I mean, there's some good creativity going on here, but yeah, and there is that irony that you talked about. So there's that. Young Thug Jeffrey. Um, Pretty cool cover, a unique photo, uh, and the minimalist nature of it's all pretty cool. So I'm supportive of having it on the list. We're rapidly approaching the halfway point, or we're past the halfway point now as we count down. Not sure it's in the top half. Wouldn't probably put it in the top half, but pretty cool cover. Definitely belongs on the list, in my opinion. Um, uh, because I just kind of like the restrained nature of it, but still striking.
I wouldn't put it on the list. Um, I do think it's a good photo. I think it's a good image of him. I do think it's memorable, it's striking. Um, I just think it's on the list though because they wanted to put Young Thug on the list. Like they wanted current artists mixed in to make it relevant to younger readers, which makes sense. So I totally get it. But I this is another one of those things like this album's not old enough to have kind of stood the test of time yet as an iconic image, in my opinion. So it's nothing against Young Thug or this album cover because I think it's a good album cover. But I think when there's newer things like this, to me, it hasn't stood the test of time yet. So you can't say it's one of the best ever.
Gotcha. This guy. What do you think about Bruce Springsteen's butt, Mike?
Yeah. So this is Bruce Springsteen's Ass, the album. Um, so I don't like Bruce Springsteen. I don't know if I've made that clear before. I'm not a fan. He's like a wrestler in that like it's a gimmick and a character that he's created. Only nobody like a lot of his fans don't know they're watching wrestling. Like wrestling fans are watching it for the athleticism and the entertainment, the showmanship portion of it. But I think the Bruce Springsteen fans don't understand the showmanship portion and that this is a character that he's playing. Bruce Springsteen isn't this guy. I even watched an interview with him, and this was not recent, but maybe like late 90s, early 2000s, where he complained that the problems with America are all because of rich old white guys who don't understand what it's really like for people like him out here. No irony in him saying that. And the interviewer just falling all over themselves to agree with him and call him a hero. Yeah, I don't like this guy. I don't and the best part of it is this is meant to be this patriotism of this album is meant to be sarcastic and his fans don't get that either. So I don't like anything about this. I don't like him. I don't like his fans. I don't like this image. You, sir?
Um, if if iconic is one of the things to go through, I guess it's iconic, but Peeps are iconic too, and I hate them. So I think I could just say you can't win on iconic alone. Um, I mean, I'd really kind of support everything that you said overall. I do think, he tried to, you know, Joe Strummer talked about the trouble of the working poor and all that, but Joe Strummer was working poor, and when Clash were doing their albums, they were squatting in houses and all sorts of other things. So he was like legit. Where I think Bruce is a bit of a WWE star. Miles Davis, Bitches Brew. Um, so the font, I'm trying to not get too distracted by the font. This is what I find most of the most annoying fonts that exist. It always irritates me when I see it at present, variations of this particular style of font. So it just bothers me. So I have a problem with this font. And so that's gonna set me back a little bit to begin with. Um, Postmodern Dolly-esque kind of feel to it. I'll give it top 100 status, but man, it just barely made it, in my opinion. That's kind of where I sit.
Yeah, this one's a little tough for me because the artwork in and of itself, I think, is good, but it's something with, I think it's just the layout, maybe. Maybe it's the font, maybe it's the way that it's positioned in there. There's just something unpleasing about the kind of flow of the image for me that would keep it off of the list. I don't hate it or anything like that. Just, and I do like the art style. It just doesn't come together for me
Yeah. If you had a perfectly cooked prime rib sitting in front of you, and then someone took Peeps and melted it on top of it, this font is the Peeps, just so you know.
though. This is always funny to me because I absolutely love
I
Peeps.
know you do.
Yeah, and it's only in like recent years have I learned that you're not alone. There's a world of people who just hate Peeps.
Yeah, we call those normal people. That's what those people are referred to. But um, so another group I think is kind of the peeps of the music world, but you'll hear your thoughts on the cover. You know, we can't just let our potential dislike of the band uh, color our thinking of this is album covers. So Rio, God, I hate that song, by Duran Duran. What do you think about this cover? And try and keep your comments to the cover.
So this is another one of those ones that I don't like it, but I remember seeing it as a kid and it always stuck with me. So it did its job. So I can understand why it would be on the list. It's not for me, but it did its job. I remembered even before I consciously heard Duran Duran, maybe I'd heard Hungry Like the Wolf on the radio or something, but before I consciously knew who Duran Duran was, I'd seen this cover.
Yeah, so out of the 1 million things Duran Duran has done wrong, I think the one right thing they did was this album cover. So I think it is really well executed. It's from a karmic standpoint, it doesn't make up for their millions of sins and all that. But I do think this definitely is a cover deserving of being in the top 100. Um, I just wish it was by a non-horrific group. So. Okay, Led Zeppelin, IV, or four if you want. So
We should have stuck with IV
we should,
and just went with it like we both don't know it's for.
we had Roll Deep join you for this review. I'm sure he would have thought it was IV. There's no IV on here.
It makes sense.
Figured it'd be Wrigley Field. So,
What kind of hospital's that?
but Led Zeppelin 4. Um, Worthy of the list. Get that off the table right away. It's my opinion. It belongs on the list. I think a pretty great album cover, in a lot of respects. So I think when you're trying to come up with an image that's going to catch people's attention, um, I would dare say not reflective of the music within, but at the same point in time, he says, "Oh, these guys they're thinking about stuff." It's just so. I think it's a pretty cool album cover. I mean, it's no Some Girls, but it's a pretty cool album cover. Your thoughts?
So I'm going to say two nice things about Led Zeppelin before I move. I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Led Zeppelin. So I'll say the two nice things that I can say about them. One is they had a really good rhythm section. The other one is that their album covers are good. They're striking album covers, they're memorable. And even if you really, 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 really don't like them and their music, you do remember their album covers. So I can't argue with it with one of their albums being on a list like this.
Okay. Um, so tell me a little bit about Kiss Alive.
I've heard of this before. So there's nothing wrong with. I mean, it's just a picture of Kiss on in a stage set, like they're playing live. Um, so there's nothing wrong with this, but I can't help but think this is one of those like Kiss Alive is obviously a huge album and iconic. Like even coming up as a kid, like I knew who Kiss are masters of their visual presentation and always were. So I think even people like younger people now who have absolutely no touchstone to Kiss whatsoever, like couldn't name a song, probably never heard them. Um, I mean, Kiss probably only released like three studio albums in my lifetime at that point. They were well into their greatest hits and live album routine by the time I really listened to Kiss for the first time. But like I knew who Kiss was and they were iconic. And it's because of this album. I mean, this is the one that really cemented them. So I can't help but think like they chose this for the album more so than the cover. Not that there's anything wrong with the cover, but it's just Kiss staring into the camera holding their instruments on a stage set. You?
Yeah, so we've it's been chronicled on previous shows. I am a member of Kiss Anonymous. Yeah, it's been 15 years since I've liked Kiss. Hi, Kelly. So um, but was a fan way back in the day. This, clearly was their breakout album, and actually elevated the three albums prior to this that sourced this. Nearly every version um, of them is better on Kiss Alive than on the studio track. We've talked a lot about Alice, and a lot of his songs are better live, but they were pretty darn good to begin with. So it's a little different here. This actually pulled a few of their songs up to being kind of good. There's some annoyances on this cover to me. The candles in the back, not very rock and roll. Ace is holding his guitar incorrectly. It is backwards because even if because he's not a left-handed player, so so he kind of swung it around. So there's a problem there. Um, and so it's fake live kind of thing. So I grudgingly give people, if they want to talk about a highly influential album, this certainly was that. I don't think there's a lot about this cover that says you got to put it on this list. So,
No. Yeah, I think it's one of those like the Lauryn Hill record. It's a huge, important record, so that's why it's on here, not because the cover is good. And that's not what the list is, though.
well, um, and then I don't know why we've got a movie poster in here for number 37, but, but I guess it's top 99 album covers and one movie poster. And here it is, Bob Dylan's The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. Um, Hands a little too deep in the pockets for my liking for Bob. Uh, just a personal note. But it does look more like a movie poster than an album cover. Um, so I nothing wrong with it beyond it looking like a movie poster. Nothing inspiring about it, in my opinion. I think it's a little more who did it and what the album is. It's why it's on this list. So, your thoughts?
So actually, I'm gonna say I like this album cover. I do agree it's probably on here more because of the album than the cover, but I've always liked this album cover. I just think if you're going to do, there's another one that's coming up on here too, where I just think it's really good images of the artist because I just feel like they captured the tone of the album and the picture of the artist, if that makes sense. So I've been hard on the album covers that are just photos of the artist because that to me, isn't what this list is. But I'm okay with this. I just like the image. And it was actually so weird movie thing. Yeah, it's a movie poster. like Kelly said. Also too, it's worked into a movie. If you've ever seen the movie Vanilla Sky, which is a remake of a Spanish movie called Open Your Eyes, this is worked into there as like a visual reference in one of the shots in the movie.
Oh, all right. Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet. Uh, you get to kick this one off.
So I'm a big Public Enemy fan, always have been. I can't remember what the first song I heard of theirs was, but ever since I was a little kid, I was a pretty young kid, and I got the tape of this probably when it came out in 1990. So I was born in 82, so I was not probably old enough to understand half of the songs on this because they're a very political group. They're one of those groups like Rage Against the Machine that I begrudgingly still listen to. The only difference is I believe it from them versus Rage Against the Machine. I don't like overly political stuff. I believe Public Enemy, like they're again, it's the Joe Strummer versus the Bruce Springsteen thing. Like Public Enemy really lived their their music and had to come up through hard times and then put that into their songs. Rage Against the Machine or I enjoy their music a lot, but are like hipsters in Starbucks getting angry about stuff that doesn't affect them. So that's the difference. And I like Rage Against the Machine. It's music, but that's just honest if if that's what it is. So I don't necessarily to me the I get it. I get the album cover, but I always thought it was a little bit too busy, especially because I had the cassette tape. When it got squished first, I had the cassette tape. When it gets squished down into the cassette tape, it's way too busy. The album cover, and especially when their first album, It Takes a Nation Millions to Hold Us Back, I think is more iconic than this album cover is.
Yeah, thumbs up on their band logo. I think it's well executed. I think it's one of the strongest ones out there. Um, I'd have to kind of say the downside for me is the same in terms of there's a lot going on here. Um, Maybe a little editing here would have been all bad. A lot of interesting concepts, but too many to kind of take in. So I'd have backed it off a little bit there, but still an interesting cover for sure. And last one on the list, the Whalers, Catch a Fire. Um, so in prep for the show, I really didn't get a chance to read the blurb on this one, and I need to because I don't know what this is. Um, we're gonna cut the video,
Disqualified.
cut the
I'll just throw it
video,
out there.
yeah, cut the video here for a second. I
Disqualified.
want to scroll down and just find out what it is.
Sure.
Oh, it's a lighter. Okay,
Mm.
all right,
Yeah, it opens up like a lighter,
okay,
the album on the vinyl,
okay.
which is clever. But again, now we're getting into the interior packaging, which to me disqualifies it from
Okay.
this. And you didn't even know what it was initially looking at it, so it doesn't do its job. It is cool. Like I've seen the old school vinyls of it where it opens up and everything. It is really cool when you open it up, but you didn't even know what it was looking at it, so it doesn't get the point across to me.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the Wailers and Bob Marley, but on in growing up with CDs, this didn't cross over into CDs well. You needed to have the vinyl and you had to physically experience the packaging to get the full effect of it.
So I'm gonna just leave in my scrolling for the video because it'll all make sense there, and you can watch me discover what it is because I miscounted on where I need to get to on this list for tonight's show. So this would have been helpful to read in advance. Yeah, you wouldn't know. I wouldn't know on first glance there. I do continue to find your packaging position fluid because because so there clears to be if there's a DMZ between the front and back covers, you can't consider the back cover. So if it's a different photo, then it's no good. But like the Beastie Boys, if it's a continuation of the first photo, it is okay. Um,
Yeah, that's a gatefold.
but a
That I'm okay
gatefold,
with.
okay, you're okay with
But
the gate exterior gatefold because the
yes,
interior gatefold doesn't count, right?
correct. Yeah, this isn't best packaging, it's best cover.
Okay. Although anyway, so so and then but the courtesy you afford the back of the album, you will not extend to the inner part of this album, which one could consider part of the same photo.
So the reason that I don't is because in the CD era, when I grew up, had I not seen a vinyl of this in a record store, I would have no idea that this would have been a lighter that opened up because that element of the packaging is completely lost after the original vinyl pressings and of course the more expensive special editions of it you can get now.
All right. I mean, if you're comfortable media shaming, I'm going to leave that up to you. That's if that's how the kind of person you are, go right ahead.
You didn't
But
even know it
that
was a lighter looking at
Yeah. So, but at least I didn't shame the media. Anyway,
it.
so I
If
just think we
only
have
the
to.
original vinyl existed. It's great. But that's not the world we live
He's complaining too much, folks. We all know now. He's a he's a corporate shill media shamer. So this is Mike. So I can't go on. So we're not going to go on any further. Maybe we'll be back to cover 34 through one at a future date. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Well, we didn't give our recommendation.
Crap. So yeah, but before we go, so this goes. I just wanted to leave. Before we go, just wanted to leave. We agreed upon, and I forgot that we would bring up other options that we are not present on the list that we think should be on the list. So why don't you go first, Mike? How is yours going to be displayed? Do you have a prop, or do I need to?
You know what? I actually didn't grab a prop for it, so I'm going to have to send you the image.
Okay,
But it's going to be the hurting from Tears for Fears.
okay.
The the image of that always stuck with me. It's a little kid in the corner, small in the corner of the album, curled up crying. So I think it gets across the kind of the dark childhood trauma storylines that the album encompasses pretty well. It's one of those albums that you look at that, you know exactly what you're going to listen to.
Um, I'm a more of a team player, and actually, I'm going to provide Mike the album cover to look at while we discuss it. Um, and of course, this is a gimme. Sorry, folks, but how can this not be on the top 100 list? I mean, it's a trout mask replica. I mean, how many others? So, Captain Beaver, and it's a hat with a badminton birdie on the top of it. So, definitely captures people's attention. Um, And this is definitely, I will admit, the fact that I'm a gigantic Captain Beefheart fan highly influences why I think it needs to be a top album cover. But I think it's a great album cover.
I agree.
So sorry, folks. I'm tired. There's a lot of albums to talk about. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll be back to talk about 34 through 1.
We have
Uh,
to split it up because of the tariffs.
Thanks for watching.
Bog Panda.